Previously on Real Repairs.
Actually, this isn't so much of a headstock break as it is a decapitation.
I'm on the side of wanting to show the scars. It's like the Tommy John surgery.
Let's put this peg head back on, man.
Who is Tommy John anyway?
I did almost set that wood on fire. We got a problem. Laser cutter caught on fire.
Seriously, what's with all the fires?
You're going to cut off some fingerboard, peel off the overlay, you're going to route a pocket, and you're going to inlay
Carbon fiber.
and then you're going to run splines. Damn, I think you're nuts in a way. You might regret this.
Will Gene pay the price for ignoring my warning?
Shout out to both Ian and James for this excellent idea. Ian and I both have dogs named Kevin.
Will the Kevins ever meet and become best dog friends?
Moving the overlay was tricky, but nothing scares me as much as drilling two long blind holes through a three-dimensional curved changing neck and not be off even a fraction of a degree.
Will Gene destroy this neck with his cartoonishly long drill bit and look like a fool in front of everyone? Find out now on Real Repairs Part 2.
Okay, abort. I'm already seeing a problem here. Look how floppy this is. I can't sit here and worry about the nth little degree and have this thing flex more than that. So let's move this further into the vise, choke it out here on the neck and get a little more support. Okay, that's much more stable. I don't want to just start drilling. I'm not just going right at it and diving in. I need to peck at it so that I don't start at a weird angle. This is a snub-nosed bit, so as it spins, it needs to kind of kiss the bottom until it forms its own little hole. I had that little awl mark there, which might help a little bit. Here we go. We're definitely in there. There we go. We're still gonna peck the whole way through so we can clear out all those chips. We don't want those building up in there and making it harder or throwing us off course. I keep waiting for this terrible release of tension where it feels like it busts through and clears something, and we've only got a couple inches to go by the time we bottom out on the chuck. We have a hole. Doesn't look like we busted through. Let's take our jig off and see what we can see. That's beautiful. That looks great. Wow, that is a perfect little teardrop. It just made its way in there beautifully. That looks like a CNC did it, honestly. I've got a piece of carbon fiber rod over here. That's the same diameter as our reinforcement. Let's just see how it does. Look at that. That is beautiful. Let's put a piece of tape on it to mark our depth. That's going right where I wanted it, right up to the 3rd fret. That is perfect. And it fits nice and tight. There's just maybe a couple of thousandths of play, which is good because we need to account for the glue. We're going to epoxy this in, and that takes up some space. So a little bit of play in here is good. So I'm going to repeat that exact same process on the other side. We're going to spend some time perfectly lining this up. And once I'm comfortable with that, I'm going to drill my second hole. Let's do it. No exit wound. Beautiful. Wow. Hit a little further back than the first one, which means this one is a little deeper, which is fine. See how it fits. Perfect. Right up to 3rd fret. All right, that's great. That's a huge relief. We needed that. But we are not out of the woods yet. That only proved that this can be done. The time has come to do this on the real thing. No more training wheels. We need to pull this off again. The vise isn't gonna cut it. I have a body attached to the end of this neck. So back into our old friend, the neck jig, so I can mount this thing securely and I'm guaranteed it's not gonna move. I'm gonna go through the exact same process I went through last time, knowing full well that this neck is a little bit different than the test neck I practiced on. I figure out all my math again based on the exact specs of this Explorer. I double, triple, quadruple check everything to be as sure as I can be before I start drilling these holes. So I'm set back up and I'm noticing a few things. There's some differences obviously between this guitar and the kit neck I practiced on, and I knew that coming in, but the angle's a little different, thickness of the peg heads, some of the dimensions on the neck, all typical stuff. But there's also weirdnesses inside of this neck that would be different than any other kit neck I would practice on. There's a little lip here from where the nut would sit. My other neck was flat all the way up to there, so I have to account for this little drop off here in my math. Not to mention, we don't really know what's going on inside of here after I've got it all glued up. I've got voids in here, I'm sure. I've got pockets of glue. If that bit hits a big pocket of glue, that glue can get gummy and bind things up. Might make it hard to pull the bit back out. It may want to wander a little more if it hits a void somewhere in there. All things that I knew I'd have to contend with. The kit neck is solid wood. That's easier to drill through. At a certain point, you just have to commit and go for it. I've done my due diligence. We're gonna find out what happens right now. Hey, good timing. I just drilled the first one.
Holy cow.
Man.
Waiting to see where it's
You
going.
looking to see if it busted out the side?
This thing?
Yeah.
But he'll love this.
So I did my test neck. You saw that and it went well. That was my first hole on the real deal. You know exactly how nerve-wracking this is, don't you? I have one more to do though, so we're not out of the woods yet.
Oh man.
Let's pull this off and see what it looks like. All right. Oh, that's beautiful. Look at that.
Man, I'm glad this is coming out the way it is and that I happened to come in and see this.
Yeah, man, what do you
I
even...
just came down to get a long shaft pot
You wiring that Les Paul?
for the Les Paul signature.
The signature.
I'll show it to you.
Yeah, well.
I'm leaving because I'm not supposed to be out of the shop more than an hour.
All right, man. Well, thanks for coming by. I'll let you know how the second one goes. That was a good omen. Having Dan stop by right at the end of that makes me feel better. This one went well. Hopefully the math is right. On this second hole, I felt a void. So I felt the bit give and drop in about a ½ inch, which means I hit some space, which is immediately terrifying because that could also mean I busted out the back of the neck. But that didn't happen. So somewhere in here, I hit a void where there's a chunk of wood missing, I'm guessing. It was a little scary, but I think we're okay. I'm gonna keep going. I've got maybe another inch to go. Okay, I'm gonna call that a success. Let's pull it off and take a look at it. Oh boy, that little drop in there, that was scary. Looks perfect. That is an enormous weight off of my shoulders. That couldn't have gone any better. Let's move on and get our carbon fiber reinforcement rods put in here. Let me show you these, check this out. So I ordered some solid rod, but around this diameter, the solid rod still had a lot of bend to it. I couldn't break it, but it just flexed a lot. So what I did, I found hollow tube. And each one of those tubes being hollow was stiffer than the solid rod at that same diameter. I cut the hollow tubes into 6-inch lengths, mixed up some epoxy, and used a fine tip applicator to inject plenty of epoxy into each tube until I could see it squirting out the other end. Then I slid each rod into the next until I ended up with 2 6-inch rods that are comprised of 3 rods each, like Russian nesting dolls. These look like just a solid, thin rod that wouldn't amount to much, but let me tell you, these are stiff and very strong. I can barely even flex these when I put all of my strength into them. We're gonna put these in here and this thing's gonna be rock solid. Now I drilled these holes just 1/1000th or 2 bigger than the actual diameter of my carbon fiber reinforcement rods. They fit perfectly. Almost too perfectly, because whenever you insert a rod into a channel like this, you need to allow room for glue. And since epoxy is really thick, even our West systems we're gonna use, it's a little thinner, there's not a whole lot of room for that glue to reside inside of this channel. So what will happen is if I fill this with epoxy and then I go to insert my tube, it's gonna push all that glue to the bottom, then the pressure that's created from that is gonna push this rod right back out. It's gonna be like a hydraulic joint. I'm gonna do something that's pretty common if you do woodworking and you dowel anything. Even if you buy commercially made dowels, a lot of them come like this. I've made this simple little jig here that's gonna hold my rod and allow me to take a 30,000th gauge saw and come along and slit each one of these just a little bit on the outside. And what that'll do is give me a line going down these, and it will allow the glue somewhere to escape. So as I push this in the hole into the glue doesn't just build up at the end and push back out, it surrounds the rod and escapes back out the other direction, hopefully. We'll find out here in a minute. So I'm gonna clamp this to the end of my neck jig to give me a place to work, and then I'll get busy slotting my carbon fiber. So these are a lot longer than I need. I should probably just cut these down now. Let me get that Dremel and the abrasive wheel out and cut these back down. Hold on. Another cool thing about these carbon fiber tubes is they're like string cheese. They're made out of long strands of carbon fiber going this direction. So if I can actually get a hold of one and peel it, it'll peel a straight line just like a piece of string cheese and would give me the gap I need for the glue. I don't want to try and force that because I might pull more of it apart than I want. So let's just cut a slot in these and see how it goes. But if one of those pops loose, I may just pull it. You know, I just need a few lines going around here to give my glue an escape route here. So let's see what happens. Let's see how that worked. It's not bad, but it's not as deep as I want. It doesn't need to be super deep. Yeah, I need a hacksaw. Oh, even better. I was gonna grab a hacksaw, but I had another idea when I was heading down to the shop. Carbide lathe tool. This stuff will cut anything. Oh, that's perfect. That's even better than a saw. It's a little hard to see because they turn gray against that black, but there's a nice little groove just to let the air and the glue kind of make its way back out. Perfect. Base, treble. Let's glue them in. I've got some paper towels, my epoxy, a cup to mix it in, a little drink to celebrate later. Just kidding, this is for cleanup. We're going to inject this epoxy with a syringe and a needle so I can get it as deep in there as I can. We'll push it around, spread it around with my brass rod. All right, this won't hurt a bit. Mix that up real good. All right, let's start with the treble side first. I'm gonna get a lot of epoxy in there, more than I really need. A lot of the reason I wanna do that is if there are any voids in there that we hit when we were drilling this, I just want epoxy to fill anything that might be in there. So I'm gonna get a lot of it in there, smear it around, and we'll see how it goes here. See, there's that hydraulic action I was talking about. It's all right, we can overcome that. So since I've got it coming back out the other way, there's enough room for that epoxy to escape. So eventually we'll equalize here, and this should hopefully stay in place. Look at that, perfect. So that little tooting sound is a little gross, but exactly what I wanted to hear. That was it. I bet it doesn't come out when I release pressure now. Perfect. That's exactly what I wanted to happen, because I want some pressure in there, because if there are any voids or anything inside of here, I want the pressure of that carbon fiber rod to force the epoxy any gap that might be in there. That's why there's way more epoxy in here than I actually need. I just want to make sure it goes everywhere I want it to. Beautiful. All right, one more. All right, so this is the one where I hit a void coming in here that almost gave me a heart attack, thinking I'd busted out of the neck. So it tells me there is some sort of a little gap or void or something in here that my drill busted through. So I really want to make sure whatever that is gets filled with epoxy. There's a lot of epoxy in there. Got it coming back out, that's good. Means all the air is out of there. And we just have epoxy and carbon fiber. Beautiful. All right, let's clean this epoxy off. Use some Q-tips. I've got some epoxy that dribbled under here, but it's also why we still have our heat shrink on the truss rod, so I don't get anything in the threads. Everclear's just high-proof grain alcohol. Works great for this stuff. So is Becol, is awesome too. It's just all alcohol, even rubbing alcohol will work. One thing I'm seeing is just a little bit of flex right here. When I do, I can see some epoxy ooze up around the carbon fiber. Yeah. So I'm gonna take a rubber band and just wrap these down, just to hold them in place down here, get a little better positive contact, and ensure that they don't kind of creep their way back out, which I don't think they're going to, but it's not gonna hurt to rubber band these down. So let me get some wax papers so I can protect the back here. May very well come in tomorrow and see that had some epoxy ooze up and glue to the top of that rubber band, but that's okay. We can clean that off later. Yeah, just a little extra insurance. Okay. Oh, what a relief. That was the day. Fires. Dan, I am tired. I'm going home. I'm gonna rest. We're gonna come back tomorrow and we're gonna start all over on the next phase. So see you tomorrow. Welcome back, folks. Our carbon fiber rods are epoxied in and they are super solid. Everything looks awesome. So we are ready to proceed with the next step in our epic saga of restoring this Explorer peg head, and that is inlaying our carbon fiber reinforcement into this headstock. So Todd and I stayed late one night after work and went ahead and used the ShopBot CNC to cut out the exact dimensions from a 16th inch carbon fiber plate. Originally, I was going to use 1/8 of an inch, but I think that's overkill. The 16th inch is way easier to work with and is still going to give us plenty of support. We used a specialized diamond-coated bit because carbon fiber is tough stuff. And we cut it in 2 passes. First a test cut to make sure everything was looking good, then a final cut to cut all the way through the material. We did have some problems with the janitor. We were getting in his way, but luckily he allowed us to finish up. This would have been very difficult for me to do this all by hand. The CNC just made quick work of this. Part 1 of this video is already out, so by now you know that our laser cutter turned into a barbecue grill and we lost the ability to laser cut the template we were going to use to route this peg head. I'm sure a lot of you are wondering, I've seen a lot of comments already on the first half of the video, why didn't I just have Todd go ahead and CNC out a template for me too? And that would make a lot of sense. It would be pretty easy. We could use the same program to go ahead and just route a plexiglass template and be done with it. But we've used a lot of technology so far in this video, and one of the other comments I've already seen on the first half is, well, how would you do this if you didn't have access to all these machines? How would this be possible? And everything we've done so far could be done without CNCs and laser cutters. I've done most of the work in my career without the aid of those tools. So what I've decided is to just go ahead and make the template by hand and show you how I would do that if I didn't have these tools at my disposal. The first thing I need to do is trim these carbon fiber rods flush to the peg head so I can take this plate and lay it flat and really get a good sense of how it fits. And the plexiglass template we're gonna make, I wanna be able to lay that flat as well. So I'm gonna get a file and clean this off first before we proceed. I'm using a razor file to trim these down. These things are great. They're super sharp CNC cut teeth on here. They're like a million little razors on here. It does a great job of trimming this down. I also realized that I started trimming these down before I put a mask on. You definitely don't want to do that with carbon fiber. It's nasty stuff. You don't want to breathe it. Okay, now I can lay this on here flat and really get an idea for how it fits. And it looks perfect. I'm right up to the back edge of my nut. I clear my truss rod cavity and I have about 1/8 of an inch or more all the way around. And I wanted it to stop. I didn't want to come all the way out to the tip here, just far enough. I don't want to risk busting anything out when I'm routing. This is plenty far here towards the end of the peg head. This is going to give us all the support we need so this doesn't flex, and it's going to reinforce this area where our crack runs. This is great. So let's talk about this contraption I've rigged up on the side of my neck jig. What I've got here are some extra rails and some extra supports that I've kind of reconfigured to act as a support for a piece of 3/8 inch plexiglass that is going to have my route in here. And these will come up and they will control how level and at what angle this template sits above my peg head. And the other reason I needed to trim those rods off was so that I could lay this flush and really get a good idea of where that route is gonna fall on my blank piece of plexiglass. These get real wobbly when they're out of here, so these wing nuts will help lock this down and stabilize all of these posts. There we go, nice and solid. Each one of these posts has a self-leveling swivel on the top, so it just levels out to the bottom of my plate, and that's gonna absorb all the pressure I put down when I'm routing, and it's gonna protect the peg head, and it's controlling its angle both this direction and this direction, so I can really dial this in to where I need it to be. And once I've cut this all out and shaped it and determined where I want it, I will drill some holes and tap those holes into these swivels so that I can screw this template down and it will not move. But the first thing I need to do is figure out exactly where on this template my route needs to be, and I have an idea for that. So let's see if this works. I'm gonna slide this table in here. I have some double stick tape, and I'm gonna take just a small piece of that, put it on my carbon fiber, and then I'm gonna take a larger piece on the top, like this, and I'm gonna trim that around. Now the small piece will hold it in place on the peg head. I'm gonna make sure I have pretty much an equal ledge on each side. That looks pretty good. Then we'll take protection off the top of it. I want to make sure I have enough room to support my router or my Dremel, whatever I end up using here. I haven't decided. When I route this out, I need to make sure I have plenty of support for the base to go all the way around, so this template isn't going to be centered with this neck. It's going to be a little offset. I'm going to line it up with the front edge of the nut. I think we're right about there. So I want about an equal gap right here and right here. Those are my two furthest points left and right. So you see I have 3 extra supports underneath this peg head as well, coming up and supporting the tip, the center, and up underneath the truss rod cavity. That's giving me plenty of support that I can put a little pressure on here without worrying about hurting anything. So I'm gonna trace this on here, and we are going to create an exact route matching our carbon fiber plate so that I can then use that to route my cavity. And that's our line. Okay, now what? I gotta find the best way to cut out the plexiglass and stay within the line. So the first thing I did was cut some strategically placed holes to give my bandsaw blade some relief. That allows me to make tight turns without binding up my blade. Bandsaws cut very accurately up to the line, but they're really hard to turn on tight corners. This is gonna help a lot. So a couple of big holes in the corners will allow me to reposition the blade without binding up. It's like giving myself a little roundabout to turn around in here. Then some smaller holes down in the tighter areas for the same reason, because it's really hard to turn down in these edges. And I went ahead and just sliced right into this template so that I could use my bandsaw as opposed to, say, a jigsaw where I could drop right into one of these holes I drilled. I prefer to use a bandsaw because I know I can cut more accurately with it. And I want to cut as close to that line as possible. I don't want to spend hours filing my way to it. So the closer I cut, the less work I'm going to have to do later, but that slice opens up my template and I need to close it again before we use it. So I measured my bandsaw blade and I got a piece of plastic binding that was about the same size, and I super glued it back into place and clamped it all up, sprayed some accelerator on it, and this thing will be rock solid. Then I finished this up on the spindle sander, first with a larger spindle to sand the sides perfectly smooth and flat. Then I got in there with a much smaller one for the harder to reach areas. And then I took it back over to the bench, and by hand I got it much closer to my original etched line, and going back and forth between the spindle sander and some files, I went until I could just slip a piece of carbon fiber inside of my route. Then I needed to finish up by hand with sandpaper and smooth out any lumps and make sure all my lines were clean and smooth. The final goal was a fit that held the carbon fiber plate in place, but not too tightly that I couldn't knock it through and let it pass freely. Wow, that looks great. This fits perfectly. I'm super pleased with that. It looks great in there. I hit every mark I needed to. It's a nice clean line all the way around my carbon fiber plate. Any little minor superficial gaps I have will get filled in by epoxy. This is gonna work perfectly. My next step is to affix this template to the neck jig. I'm making sure that the peg head has plenty of support, but I'm also making sure that it's flat. So what I'm seeing is I want a little extra pressure in the center because it's cupping just a little bit, nothing major. But if I can get a little more pressure right here, it's pushing nice and flat. And then when I glue that plate in there, it should help hold it flat. So I'm going to drill some holes and tap some holes into these swiveled feet, and mount it this way. But the first thing I'm gonna do is drill a hole right through here and tap into my truss rod cover screw. That's gonna set the template right here so it can't move, and then I can find the spot where I wanna drill into my swivels and create my holes for that. This is gonna allow me to level all of this out and hold it steady, and then we're gonna route this channel. Change to a bigger flat bottom bit, brad point bit. So instead of cutting a round bottom hole, so I'm not gonna drill all the way through, I'm gonna drill just deep enough so the screw sticks out the bottom and doesn't stick up on the top. Screws also have to sit below the surface, so they're gonna get countersunk, pop through the back, and aren't sitting on the top anymore. 3 more times. Next step is to take off my plastic swivels so I can drill and tap holes into those so that I can mount my plexiglass to them. Okay, there we go. The plexiglass is tightened down and we're ready to route. That took quite a bit of positioning and time lining this all up. I had a very small window of where I could be levitating height-wise above the top of this peg head. Let me show you why. I'm gonna be using 2 different bits. I'm gonna be using a small router. I considered using a Dremel because it's smaller and a little easier to control, but it doesn't give me the options of bearing bits that I wanted to use. So ultimately I decided to go with the Bosch Colt. It's just a small 1 horsepower mini laminate trimmer or router. And I can use bearing bits. I'm gonna use 2 different sizes, a tiny one with this little delicate little bearing right here, and then a bigger one with these 2 larger bearings right here. I need to use this tiny bit so that I can get all the way inside these little tiny corners, but I don't want to use this tiny delicate little bit to take away all of this material that I'm going to be routing here. So I'm going to switch to a larger bit, and I need to be at a height above this peg head where these bearings will contact the edge of my template, just like this is doing right now. It's just barely clipping the top. So I can ride all the way around this template and I can remain in contact everywhere I route. But when I use the small bearing, this has to be at a height where that happens as well, because these 2 bearings aren't in the same position on the shaft. So this bearing, it's lower on the shaft, still contacts the bottom of this template. And I finally found that tiny little window after a lot of trial and error and positioning and repositioning and moving the guitar. I think I'm finally there, but to make sure, I'm gonna take 1 tiny skim pass with my small bit, just to make sure that I'm level everywhere, that I'm in line of my peg head, and that everything looks good. We're just gonna take a tiny little pass and judge how we did, and if that's okay, we'll route the rest of it. right, that looks good. I'm not going out of my lines anywhere. I think I'm ready. I'm gonna continue on with the smaller bit and do around the truss rod cavity first and get that to depth. Then we'll change bits, we'll put the bigger bit in and just take away the rest of this bulk of this material. Everything seems nice and sturdy, nothing's moving. Let's go, let's do it. So our carbon fiber plate is 64 thousandths. I think I'm gonna break that into 2 passes. So we'll do 32 thousandths a pass roughly, so about a 30 seconds each until we get to 64. I think it'll be safer that way. We'll just take 2 light passes. This is all very delicate, so safety first. 34 thousandths, roughly halfway, a little more. All right, I'm getting about 65 right there. That's totally fine. A few thousandths here or there is not gonna be a big deal. So I just cut a chunk of carbon fiber off of my scrap piece here, and I'm laying it inside my line, and you can see I'm dead flush with the top of this peg head. I'm looking real good. So this is a much bigger bit. I think I can take the whole 64 thousandths in one pass with this, no problem. And since I nailed the depth on this side, I can use this side to set the depth here. I'm just gonna drop it on the template until it bottoms out and then let the base come down and touch. So I'm gonna lock it into place here. So that should be good. I'm gonna take a quick little pass here down somewhere in the middle just to see what it's measuring. So just a little test cut there. So now I can check that and see where I'm at. And if I'm a little off there and I need to readjust, that's no big deal. I'm gonna set this block across my template so that I can zero off of it. So I'll touch my dipstick to the top of the peg head where I haven't routed. I'll come down and then I'll zero out my caliper. So now any farther this tail sticks out will tell me the depth. So now I'll move over top of where I routed, touch bottom there, come down to where I set my zero. 71, 72 thousandths. So I'm a little deeper there. No problem. We're looking at, 6, 8 thousandths there. That's not a big deal. I'm gonna bring this bit back into the machine just a hair, and I'm gonna do that one more time next to that, and check my depth again. $65, that's pretty good. Let's drop our little test piece in here. That's beautiful. We're pretty flush right there. Here we go, let's route the rest of this. That looks amazing. Let's see if our plate fits in there. Look at that. Beautiful. Wow, it is amazing to see this come to life exactly how I pictured it. Let's get this template off of here and get a closer look at it. Wow, that is great. I'm dead flush all the way along here. Just a little bit of gaps in a couple of spots, and that's no problem at all because I'm going to epoxy this in next, and that epoxy is going to bleed in and fill in all of these gaps. It already flexes less just holding that in place. This is turning out perfect. Let's glue this in. I've got all my supplies here. We're going to mix up some epoxy. I got all the clamps and cauls I think I need, some rags and some alcohol to clean up, and I've already done a dry clamp just to practice to make sure everything's fine. This should be no problem. Mix up way more than I need here. I'm gonna put a little paste wax on my caul just for added security, just to make sure I don't accidentally glue my caul to the top. I'm gonna use some wax paper too. This will just all help keep any epoxy that squeezes out from sticking to anything. More glue than I need, but I want to just make sure it floods everywhere and fills up any gaps we might have.
plate in here. Perfect. Look at that. Squeeze out all along the edges. Beautiful. A little alcohol on a rag, make sure. Let me get this cleaned up. Come in and clean out the tuner holes. Piece of wax paper. Our call. We're gonna let this dry overnight. We're gonna come in tomorrow, take off these clamps, clean everything up, and then we're gonna prep to put the overlay back on, and we're heading into the home stretch of this epic peghead restoration, and I couldn't be happier. We'll see you guys tomorrow. I was so excited about this all night. I got up at like 3:30 this morning and I got to work super early. I didn't even wait for Susan to get here and turn on the cameras because I wanted to see how this turned out. And I was very, very pleased. This looks great. It's dead flush. I didn't get any epoxy anywhere I didn't want it. And check this out. There's no flex to that peg head already. It's super solid, and it's only gonna get more solid from here because now I need to glue the overlay back down. But before I can glue the overlay down, we need to drill our holes through our carbon fiber plate. So you may already be wondering, why didn't I just go ahead and CNC those holes into the plate to begin with when I had Todd cut that out? While that does make a lot of sense on one hand, the problem that presents is it would have been even more tricky to line that plate and that template up. I would have had one more thing of keeping all the holes lined up with all the holes in the neck. It would have just made that step that much more difficult. And the other thing is this guitar was made in 1976. These holes weren't drilled by a CNC machine, and they've obviously had some work done on them between 1976 and 2026. So I doubt that they're perfectly on center. They're certainly not as perfect as a CNC would do. So the perfection I would have gotten by CNCing those holes into my carbon fiber plate would actually make this harder. And I'm just gonna do that myself by hand. Let me show you this little jig I made. This is just a chunk of 5-ply birch plywood with a little cork on the bottom and this brass tube going through it. I made this by just drilling a little bit of an undersized hole right here through my block. Then I took a piece of aluminum tubing that fits this drill bit right here, and I used a drill press to drill a hole straight through this piece so that this tube would sit in here at a 90-degree angle. I reamed it out so I could just press it into place and it holds nice and tight. And what I can do with this is mount it through this hole, and that's going to allow me to use a hand drill to drill a hole straight through 90 degrees to the back of the peg head, straight through my carbon fiber. Now this hole is smaller than the diameter of the hole through the peg head, which is the reason I need a jig so that I can drill straight and keep it centered inside of this larger hole, because carbon fiber is incredibly strong. We've already talked about this. We had to buy a special diamond bit just to route it out. So normally if I was drilling through carbon fiber, I would want a carbide bit or a diamond bit, something specially made for drilling through something this hard. But what I've decided to do instead, since it's only a 1/16 of an inch thick, I just have a cheap Harbor Freight drill bit and a cheap Harbor Freight reamer. By the time I drill 6 holes with this thing and ream 6 holes with this thing, they'll be done. So this is gonna allow me to first drill a hole concentric to the outside, straight through my carbon fiber plate. Then I can carefully by hand with a reamer, ream it to the exact size that I want to fit these 2 little nylon plugs I've made here. So what I'm gonna do with these is they'll go through my holes, just like that. And those also fit through the holes in my overlay. So these are gonna line my overlay up because it mates all the way along the outside perfectly, and I don't wanna be askew in any direction, or else I'm gonna have a lip that I'm gonna have to touch up. Everything will be flat, everything will be straight, and we'll be good to go. Let's keep the wood side up so that I have something to drill into. Carbon fiber chips a lot too, so this will help minimize any of that. If we do get some chipping, it's not a big deal because we're putting the overlay over top of it, but we'll do our best. The other thing I'm gonna do is put a little bit of guitar grease. This is just graphite grease, just to kind of help lubricate this through here. That's aluminum, so we'll be lucky to get 6 clean holes out of that thing before it's done. These are all gonna be disposable for this. All right, success. No chip out, no cracks. This is perfect. So let's drill our other 5. Six perfect holes. Let's ream those to size. After I ream the first one and get it right, I can take a piece of tape and mark off my reamers. So the other ones will go quicker because I'll know where to stop. Okay, so this is starting in that hole, but it doesn't go all the way through, and that's because I'm using a tapered reamer, so it's a little bit bigger on the top than it is on the underside of that plate. Normally, if it was just the plate itself, I'd come in from the other side and ream until it was at the size I needed, and the two would meet together and I would be fine, but I can't do that because of the back of the peg head. So what I'm gonna do here, this is a straight reamer at 375, the same diameter as my nylon tube. I'm really close here, so just a quick little pass with this ought to get me perfect. Just like that. And, oh, that's perfect. It fits nice and tight, no wobble, but loose enough that I can get it out easily. So we'll come close to this tape and then we'll ream with the drill. The last thing I need to do before I put down this overlay is just kind of clean this up. I've done no cleanup on this. This is just a little bit of epoxy left, so we're gonna flatten this off and clean it up. So I've got a flat block here with some 80 grit sandpaper, and we're just gonna do a quick cleanup across here. This is a really cool thing to see the stage we're at now. You can see the carbon fiber plate was CNC'd perfectly, and then the outside line that it fits within is what I did by hand, and it's not perfect, but it's pretty darn close. So you can do accurate work without a CNC machine. Let's check in on our veneer. All right, we haven't seen this since episode 1, right after I removed it and clamped it flat. I mainly wanted to keep it flat and discourage it from shrinking. Not all veneers are fiberboard. A lot of vintage Gibsons were these thin ones, were either holly or fiber, not like a thicker wooden veneer you might see on some guitars, but fiber can still shrink. Let's try it out with our dowels. That'll center it with our holes, and then we'll really see where we may be missing anywhere on the edges. So lined up with our dowels, I am off a little bit here, right at the end of our radius. I feel a little bit of a lip right along here, and I'm short here and a little bit here. So our dowels aren't lining us up perfectly. So I'm just gonna try one dowel and see how that works. Okay, so with one in there, I've lost my lip here and I'm even over here. I'm much better down here. I'm still just a little shy right here. I was expecting this thing to move a little bit, but clamping it flat kept it from doing anything we couldn't deal with. So I think I'm just gonna go ahead and use one pin and glue this thing on. Alcohol for cleanup, rags and paper towels, brush if I need it. Good to mention that I wouldn't normally just take straight alcohol on a nitrocellulose finish. It's not like lacquer thinner or acetone, but it is a little bit hotter, and you can kind of cloud up or soften your nitro with it if you're not careful, but I'm not too worried about this because it's going to get some finish work after this is all done. Forgot to put on my gloves. Remembered before I got epoxy all over myself. So this is basically a repeat of the same process we used to glue this plate in. I'm going to use the same cauls, but I drilled a hole in this one so I can insert my dowel through there. I keep just instinctually wanting to rush through this because I've got glue curing under here, but we use that West Systems again, and that gives us at least 30, 40 minutes of open working time, if not even a little bit more. So I have to keep reminding myself to relax and just move smooth here. squeeze out. That's what I want to see. So then we go around the edges and we push, and if we see any squeeze out, like right here, that little squeeze out tells me I need more clamp pressure right there. I'm just gonna replace the other spring clamp and put another rubber band here. I prefer rubber bands most of the time anyway. They put even, steady pressure everywhere. You don't have to over clamp to get what you want. It just spreads the force out really well. The problem with rubber bands is you can't see squeeze out. So you have to be really careful you're not getting glue squeezing out into the rubber bands. But since we clamped it with regular clamps, cleaned all that up, I think I've got all my squeeze out done. It's okay to put them on now. We're gonna let this cure, let that epoxy harden up. We'll take off all the clamps and see what we've got to deal with from there. So this is huge. Not just because we're starting to see the finish line ahead of us here. This is huge because we are now out of the danger zone, as Kenny Loggins would say. And by that I mean, none of the rest of the work we have to do to finish this guitar out could result in us making it worse. Everything we did under this peg head that you can no longer see, all the reinforcement and the heating of the overlay and all of that removal and that damage we had to do to make it better, if any of that went wrong, we could have easily have made this guitar worse. Everything else should be smooth sailing. But let's back up a minute because this didn't look like this coming out of the clamps. When I took everything off, I noticed that I still had that gap at the end of the peg head, just a slight lip of mahogany. And for that, I took my burnisher, this tool I use for a lot of different things, and it's great for this. I just kind of pushed that mahogany and rolled it over. So I didn't actually really remove any wood, I just remolded it a little bit so that we don't have that sharp lip. I also noticed that I had an overhang across my E, A, and D tuners. The overlay stuck off just a little bit. I could grab it with my fingernails. With a series of scrapers and our binding scraping tool, this worked really well. I trimmed this overhang and got it flush with the top of the peg head. But the big job for all of this was cleaning up my epoxy that I'd missed. I had a couple of dribbles here that came out overnight. I had some residue of epoxy that snuck in underneath my wax paper. So I went to work trying to scrape that flush and get it clean with the remaining lacquer that was still all there. In the process of the scraping and cleaning up, it really just became pretty evident that this was gonna be way better if I just stripped this peg head down to the bare fiber board here. So I got out my Eagle abrasives, used the lower grits, and just went at it, carefully stripping all the way down to the overlay. That's what we're looking at right now. There's very little lacquer left on this, around the logo, a little bit down here. In the end, I figured it was just gonna be quicker to take this all the way down and shoot a fresh coat over the whole thing than it was for me to spend all day trying to clean up all these little areas of epoxy and then finish over them. So this is all prepped, it's dead flat, it's super solid, there's no glue left on it, and I know it's gonna look awesome after we put finish on it because that's why I rubbed this naphtha on it. This gives us a sneak peek of what's in store for us, and can't complain about that. The next thing I need to do is finish addressing the cracks on the back. I need to finish out this plug I put in here because I just did a quick leveling and shaping. It's still a little proud here and a little bit lumpy. I'm gonna try and mix up some colored epoxy and see if I can fill in the rest of our crack around here and make that look pretty good. All right, well, I'm just gonna take this one step at a time. First, I'm gonna concentrate on finishing out my plug. I don't wanna just take this level with everything around it. Ideally, I take it level with the actual wood of the guitar. This is paint, and it builds up of a 1,000th or two, maybe 3,000ths or so. The wood is below that. So if I just level this off to the top of the paint, and I go in and airbrush and put paint back over that, it's still gonna have a little bit of a lumpy feel, even if it's only 1,000th or two higher than the rest of the finish around it. So if I can, I'm gonna come in and level this and take it just a hair below the rest of the paint. I don't exactly know how I'm gonna do that, but I have an arrangement of the tools I think I'm gonna wanna use. And I'll start with a chisel and just begin pecking away at this. I also have these little Ibex finger planes. These are great. Let's try one and see how they work. Okay, nice. I've got this about flat with the rest of the neck, so let me go in here with a chisel again and see if I can take it slightly lower than the surface. Okay, I'll bring out my old burnisher again. If you're trying to make wood look old or used or broken in, these are the way to go. It'll just smooth this out and make it look more natural. So this is just some leftover of the mahogany I made this fill from, so it's the right width. Put a curve on it so I can kind of just stay on that. Let's put some sandpaper on here.
Yeah, this is working pretty good. Okay, let's work on this little curve right here. I want to be able to close my eyes and run my finger over this where that transition happens. Okay, we're pretty much where I want to be. This lip, when I run my fingers across it, I can just feel the slightest drop. And that'll be a perfect little space for some colored epoxy. Again, when I wipe it with naphtha, I can get a good idea of what it'll look like with just clear lacquer over it. The plug seems maybe a little bit darker than the Explorer. I think that's because of the black grain specks in here. If you look up towards the peg head up in this area, that pore filler is almost a yellow, creamy looking color. So I might want to think about mixing some sienna or a little yellowish kind of color into this epoxy. We'll mix them up and see. I also want to get the epoxy all up along these cracks.
I have some voids like here, and a little one here, a little one back here, here, and then all along here.
Okay, let's mix up some epoxy and play with some colors. I'm first going to try some burnt umber. That looks a little too dark. Let's try some mahogany. Yeah, that's way closer. Let's add some yellow or a raw sienna here. That doesn't look too bad.
I don't know, I'm gonna try and fill in one of these voids and just see what it looks like.
I'm using the glue looper to drop this in, and I need to keep in mind that it's always gonna look a little darker down inside the crack. But I think I can live with that. Let's see what it looks like on the plug. Yeah, I think this looks pretty good.
And one thing, I try to avoid brushing these kind of things. They don't ever look right brushed. You always end up with some brush marks or something in there. So the best thing to do is spray, or if you have it to fill, to just kind of drag it in here. One thing I want to do to kind of obscure this fill is hide these straight lines a little bit. You know, anytime you have a straight, unnatural joint, like a straight line or 90-degree angle, it doesn't look right because draws your eye to it. It's unnatural. So if you can break that straight line up a little bit with some color or adding some fake grain across that line, just something that just doesn't draw your eye to it immediately. We've also got, a situation where this guitar is very old and it's gone through a lot of damage and a lot of changes, and it's not one uniform color anywhere. So this color started out looking pretty good up here, but then as I get down here, it looks a little more yellow compared to the color of the brown down here. I might take some of this darker brown that I have. See if mixing that in helps.
I'm just gonna let this flow right down my fracture here and fill in this large gap. And that's filling in really nice. That looks great. I think I need to just let this cure for a bit before I flip it and do the other side. It's just too runny. And it'll change colors a bit when it dries, so let's just stop for now. I'm gonna give it overnight and we'll see how this looks tomorrow. So this is set overnight and it looks awesome. I'm still really happy with this color, so today my task is to fill the other side of the crack and scrape this all down so it's nice and smooth. So let's mix that epoxy. Yesterday I started with umber, but today I'm gonna start right with the mahogany. That seemed like a much better color. And I'm noticing that crack from yesterday does look a bit darker.
So you can see, here's the problem we run into with the crack. When I smear it out and get it like to the consistency and thickness that I might be looking at as finish on a flat piece, that's not too bad. That looks pretty good. But when I move it all together and thicken it up, look how dark it gets.
Let's let that thicken up a bit, and I'll turn my attention to scraping down the plug.
I'm gonna start with one of the mini ultimate scrapers. We obviously lose our clear view and our shine when I scrape on it. Let's add some naphtha to it. It gives me an idea of. So I'm super happy with this little section through here. This color, the intensity and the opacity I got looks pretty good. The plug is looking pretty good. When I get it shiny, I'm wishing it was a little more opaque like my piece down here. So technically, I'm going to make this look worse for a bit so that I have a chance to make it look better. I'm actually removing some finish outside of my plug so I can blend the finish in over top of my line. I think it'll look better if I do that.
Okay, I'm gonna stop there. And it looks like our epoxy has gotten nice and thick.
I want this to go on really thin. So I've scraped up to my lacquer here, and that's 1,000th, 2,000ths maybe. I want this to be pretty brown and opaque at a thin concentration. Oh yeah. Let's smear that around and see what we got. This looks really dark right now, but I've got a big glob of it on there, so I scraped off my excess, which is what I've got on this popsicle stick. And it's gooping up like caramel here, like dark caramel. And I'm trying to just dab spots of that back in on top of my line, with the hopes that it doesn't make that line so straight. I'm not going to get a perfect match, and at a certain point you just have to decide what you're going to live with and hope that you didn't make it worse in the process. So this aspect of repair work is kind of a specialty. There are guys, who kind of specialize in this stuff, who are real artists that do some pretty amazing things. At the end of the day, I can count on one hand the number of times I've done a touch-up like this and gotten to the end of it and thought, this is perfect, where I've been truly satisfied and didn't want to continue messing with it to try and make it better. I always get to the end and feel like I could have done better. And the one thing I've learned from my pal Jeff Jewett, who's a master of finished touch-ups, is kind of knowing when to quit is the hardest part, and the what I probably struggle with the most. But I'm about ready to hit that point here, at least on this section. Okay, I'm gonna let this sit up for a little bit. But while our epoxy is still runny enough that I can use it, I'm gonna start taking this color and filling in this crack. It's not too bad. We'll see what this looks like when I scrape it back. I'm gonna let this sit. We'll let it get hard and see if, when I scrape it back the second time, if we did better than the first time. We'll be back. Okay, so this has been curing for about 24 hours straight right now, and it looks awesome. It's hard, it's solid. I think it's about the right shade. Like we talked about, we needed this to be at the shade where after I scrape it, it lightens up to where I want it to be, and it's not too dark when it's layering on top of itself. And I don't know, let's start scraping on it and see how we did, but I'm pretty pumped about how this looks right now. You folks may also hear in the background a 3D printer going off, making a prototype of a new string winder, so you may hear that in the background. I'm gonna switch to this one, the smaller one, because I really want to avoid, it wouldn't take much scraping to remove more of this lettering, so I want to be a little more careful right here. I want a nice clean scrape. This scraper's sharp and doing a really good job, but as soon as it starts to chatter, actually see just a little right there, you get that kind of skipping and those lines going across where it's jumping. I either need to switch to a different tool or go sharpen this. I want this cutting as cleanly as possible. Oh, that looks great. When it gets that wet, glossy look from the naphtha, I can see the color is a pretty decent match. There's a little bit of a difference in color on the transition points, a little darker. I got it as close as I could. At the end of the day, I think this looks awesome. And no matter how much time I spend on it, it's not going to be invisible, nor do we want it to be. So I'm just going to scrape the rest of this excess epoxy off everywhere else. You really want to be able to not feel this. If it feels lumpy at all right now, or you feel really obvious ledges or ridges, lumps from this epoxy, once you buff it out, it's just going to pop out like a sore thumb. You really just want to blend it into the rest of the lacquer as much as you can now. That looks awesome. I'm pretty happy with this. I mean, the color inside of the fill itself, my patched in piece, if you disregard everything around it, that's pretty close. Not exactly the same shade as here, but the rest of the natural peghead isn't the same shade as right here either. So I achieved the objective I was after, which is to obscure these straight lines. This kind of splotchiness of color is really what we need. I'm not trying to match a uniform, clean color. I'm trying to match the chaos of this entire headstock. I don't want to hide this crack, as we've talked about. None of this is drawing my eye directly to it. And even once it's wet, it looks even better. I'm gonna call this good. I'm gonna hit it one more time with some Eagle abrasives to smooth this all down.
Eagle abrasive grits do not correspond to regular sandpaper. So if I say I'm using a 240 or a 320, it's not like 220 or 340 or even 600 that you get from the hardware store. It's not as aggressive as the numbers say. So we'll start out with 600. So I want to flatten off any sharp edges or corners I have here, take out any major scratches, and just blend all this together, the final kind of flattening of all of this. A lot of beginners, even me at the beginning of my career, if I would tackle something like this and didn't know better, after that initial glue up with all that lumpiness, I might just start sanding on it. You see that a lot, and that's a mistake. You first want to scrape it level and get it all flat. It's really hard to control sandpaper with what you're hitting. So I may end up eventually getting it flat, but in the meantime, I'm also sanding finish around it. It's just too hard to be precise with shaping with sandpaper. Sandpaper is for scratch removal and smoothing, and that's what I'm doing now. All right, this is smooth. It feels good. If I close my eyes, I can barely feel any of it. It's perfect. So now I have two choices. I can buff this out, shine this all back up. As is, it'll look pretty good. But if I take my naphtha again here and wet this down, those spots where I went through all kind of darken back up and get shiny again. This all blends together a little more, and I'm looking through a layer of clear gloss. It doesn't hide anything. It actually makes that crack stand out even a little more. It makes it shinier. I think it actually looks better and looks cooler. So a light coat of lacquer is gonna blend all this together. I think it's gonna make it look a little nicer, and it's just gonna protect some of these bare wood spots. So we're gonna do two things. We're gonna spray a light coat of lacquer on the back of this to blend it all in and try to melt it into the original lacquer as much as possible. And we're gonna refinish the front of this peg head. Put a nice clean gloss over this and make it look appropriate with the rest of this guitar. And to do that, we're gonna take a field trip to the roof of StewMac. All right, so we're on the roof of StewMac on a gorgeous windy day. Obviously, this isn't an ideal location or even the ideal weather with all of this wind. The first thing I'm gonna start with is some lacquer retarder. This is sold as blush eraser. It's butyl cellusolve. It's meant to soften existing lacquer to allow blush to escape if you've got a white haze from moisture. But it's also really good as a repair tool to kind of soften old lacquer and give the fresh lacquer more of an opportunity to bite in and burn in with the lacquer. If I get a soft layer going with some cellusolve first, that lacquer will burn in even deeper and be less likely to leave witness lines on top of the lacquer. So I'm gonna hit this to soften some of the old lacquer, and once I get a good coat of that, we're gonna switch to clear lacquer. I'm gonna use this board to try and keep as much directly off of my serial number as possible, because if I soak it too wet, I might dissolve it or make it run. Okay, with blush eraser, we don't really need to give this any time to dry. We want to spray on it while it's still wet. So now we're going to move on to spray on our first coat of clear lacquer. I need to spray an even coat here, nice and wet, but not so heavy that it runs. All right, I'm just going to give that a few minutes to tack up. We're going to flip it over and shoot a coat on the front of the peg head. I'm gonna try something too. We've got some light and color on this logo. Some of that was already there, but a little of it in the process of cleaning it up, chipped out and lightened up a little bit. Nothing that looks odd on this guitar at all. I could totally leave it alone, but I'm gonna take a light coat of vintage amber and just try to lightly mist this peg head and see if I can blend that color in a little bit. I think that helped. We're gonna stop there though. I don't wanna get too much color on that. We'll layer some clear on top of that and it's gonna look great. All right, here we go. I'm okay with it being this windy and less than ideal out here doing this right now because these are our base layers. We're gonna let this sit overnight and do a little bit of level sanding, and then I anticipate another coat or two of lacquer at least tomorrow. We want those to go on cleaner. We're gonna stop there for today. I'm gonna let this tack up until we can bring it inside, and we'll sit overnight and we'll see what we've got to work with tomorrow. Okay, this is set overnight and it looks pretty good, but I can tell already just from experience, I don't have enough lacquer
on here to level sand it out completely. So we're gonna need to spray some more, but it looks pretty good. It's a little pebbly. Orange peel is what it's called as lacquer kind of shrinks back. It takes on little tiny pock marks like the surface of an orange. And we need to have enough lacquer on here to be able to level that flat and get rid of all of those pock marks until we have a glassy, smooth surface. And I can just tell by looking at this that I'll go back through and hit the original overlay before that happens. So we're gonna do a light cleanup just to remove any dust or debris that landed in this from us shooting outdoors. Let's pull out our Eagle abrasives and do a little cleanup here. My shiny spots are low, my dull spots are high. Ultimately, we're gonna wanna go until I can sand all of this and I have no shiny spots left. Part of the reason why we hit it first with some butyl cellusolve to just give that dry overspray a better chance at biting into the old lacquer and being less noticeable. This just has a kind of a sandy feel. I wanna get rid of that sandy feel. I'm not worrying about this being level yet. I even have a little bit of a sag here, like kind of almost a run. I was laying this lacquer on pretty heavy yesterday, pushing it a little bit, and it started to move a little bit right here. I'm gonna scrape that flat rather than try to take a piece of sandpaper that's just gonna work over that bump and create valleys on either side of my high spot. I'm gonna knock it down first with a scraper and then sand it. More level than I even thought it would. I'm not gonna push it because the last thing I wanna do is go through and lighten up a spot of color. Then that's even more work to deal with. I'm gonna stop there over top of the crack and everything. Hit some of this pebbliness up here. Very lightly over top of this. There's just a lot of orange peel and sandy texture over top of my serial number. I don't want to go through and hit it, but that's a little better. Let's look at the other side. So this was originally the logo inlaid and everything painted over, and I wanted to keep this yellow color to the aged clear that this guitar started out with. I didn't want to lose any of this original color, so I took my time to just scrape all the way around this. So the logo is a little proud. It's above the surface of the rest of this paint. So I'm gonna lightly hit this and take away this sandiness, but I gotta be careful not to go over top of this. One or two quick swipes and I could start to lose color on that logo. So you can see these shinier spots. This is where I'm hitting the dusty gray spots. The light spots are where my sanding block is not hitting. It's the fresh lacquer underneath that. We're not gonna try and get rid of that now, but eventually that's what my goal is gonna be. All right, that's it. You have to be careful about not going too far at this stage. A younger version of me probably would have. I'm gonna call this good, but I think another coat, maybe two, and we'll be able to level this out next time. So I'm gonna get some air out and blow off all the dust. Then I'm gonna grab some naphtha so I can wash off any oils or anything that might interfere with the fresh coat of lacquer, and we're gonna hit the roof again. To the roof. The wind is way better, but today I can already tell the humidity is higher. So there's a chance we get some blushing, and that's when moisture gets trapped inside the lacquer and it'll turn kind of a ghosty, opaque white. But that's what blush eraser is actually for. We're gonna start out though with just a little bit of it again, mostly down here on the neck, so any of my dusty overspray that lays here has a better chance of burning into the old lacquer. All right, we'll give that a moment to burn in, and then we're gonna hit it with some clear lacquer. I'm always going for as wet of a coat as I can get, short of it running. I want plenty of wet lacquer on there to burn into the old lacquer and give it time to level itself out. I think I've got that now. I'm getting some blushing. I can already see faint ghosty whiteness around my tuner hole here and right on the edge. Now, if I just give this time, that's so faint that it will probably just evaporate out on its own. So if it doesn't go away on its own, we'll hit it with some blush eraser and that will be fine. We're just gonna flip it over, put a coat on the headstock. Over top of this black overlay is probably where we'll notice any blushing right away. It's less likely to happen on light coats. When I start to lay it on there real wet, that's when it blushes. I can see this is on the verge of it. I'm gonna give this a minute here. That is a beautiful looking coat though. All right, I'm not gonna push it too much. We've got a lot of lacquer on there. Well, it's been about 18 hours since my last coat yesterday before I left, and this looks great. Lacquer looks pretty level. Other than just normal orange peel that I expect, I don't see any major drips or lumps or anything that's not gonna come out. Nice and shiny. I think I have enough thickness on there. Let's look at the back. Oh yeah, that looks great too. It's even more level on the back. I think I even have less orange peel back here. This almost looks like it's ready to buff out. So yeah, this looks great. A lot of people think you can't do pro work with an aerosol can, and it's definitely more challenging than if you have a spray room and pro equipment, but it can totally be done. If you want to find out more, we do have a 3-part series on aerosol finishing. Our buddies at Driftwood Guitars did, and it's excellent. It takes you through all the steps, all the rules, everything you need to follow in order to be able to do pro work with an aerosol can. I've been breaking and bending all of those rules because we are coming down to the wire. We need to get this back to Reverb. We're in crunch time here. I have been spraying more coats than I probably should in a day, faster than I should, without enough dry time between them. Today, I'm really hoping that we can level sand this and it comes out perfectly level. Then we can let it sit for about a week to dry. So just even a few seconds, that looks pretty great. And I'm almost flat already. I don't think we're gonna have any problem. Let's keep going. A little shiny spot, a little shiny spot. These are coming right out. They're not quite so noticeable, but the idea is to get all of that out. At a certain point, I have to judge, like, is there enough paint that I can keep leveling these out, or am I gonna go through? Am I gonna go too far? There might even be spots where I wanna put a ding back there or something, like this peg head would not be perfect. So some scratches, some checks, some dings, all a normal part of a guitar this old. We're gonna flip this over and do the back. All of these edges around holes, cavities, tuner screws are delicate. There's a lot less lacquer. I have to be careful around these areas that I don't sand through on these thin spots. I don't have to be quite as worried about the logo as I was in the beginning because I know I have a clear over it to protect it. Here's a little problem that I'm gonna have to contend with. I still have some remnants of a drip right here, because I told you I was laying it on thick, especially on these edges, and I missed a drip right here. I think I'm gonna hit that with a razor blade before I keep going. Just light scraping until it's almost flush, and then we'll take the scratches out with sandpaper. Okay, I think it's time to wipe this thing down and really check it out. I think we're there. A little naphtha is gonna clean this off and reveal anything that's not jumping out to me. So it's pretty hard to hide under that wet layer. It's like a magnifying glass. Oh yeah, fantastic. Look at that. Yeah, that's awesome. Let's look at the other side. Whew. That looks great. This is flat. There's still a little more leveling to do. I wanted to get a preliminary level just to make sure I have enough lacquer on this because I don't want to spray any more today. I'm not going to finish that out because that process would involve going through successive grits until we get up to a much higher grit because I'm not only leveling out imperfections, I'm removing scratches from the previous grit until we get to a smooth, almost shiny, flat surface that prepares us for buffing. And the reason we're not doing that today is because this needs time to dry. There are solvents. It smells like naphtha right now, but there are solvents in this finish that you can still smell. They're evaporating, so even though I can touch it, it feels hard. You might think it's dry. It is not. I'm gonna give it a chance to shrink some more, to settle, to harden up even more, and for more of those solvents to gas out. But this is fantastic. We're exactly where I want to be. Let's give this time to dry. Today is 1 week since we sprayed our last coat and did our initial leveling. It looks pretty level. I don't see any major shrinking or any orange peel that has popped up. My crack looks good. I'm not feeling it through the finish. But what I'm really kind of going for is what does it smell like? Because lacquer is an evaporative finish, which means it has solvents that need time to evaporate. And if I can still smell strong solvents, we know it needs more time. So I don't smell anything major. It's going to continue on for weeks after this, but it's going to be minuscule amounts. So I have two immediate goals finishing up this touch-up process. First, I want to make the back of the neck match the back of the body. I want this shine and this shine to look the same. Then on the front of the guitar, we have our peg head overlay. And I was looking back at pictures of this when it came in before I took it off, and this thing was in good shape. It had a lot of lacquer on it, it was level and it was shiny, so I want to match that. I'm going to level this out, and then I'm going to buff it and try to make this look like it never came off. So we're going to get our Eagle abrasives back out. I may not hit every single one of these. These are just what are available to me, and I'm going to decide as I go what I need. Let's begin on the back and see how we do. I'm going to start with 800 grit because we left off at 600 last time. I like to go in straight lines when I'm doing this, and then I go in opposite directions with each grit so I can watch my scratches, and when I can't see scratches from the last grit, I know I'm done. So 800 removes 600 grit scratches, 1000 grit removes 800 grit scratches, and so forth. That's why there's so many different ones. And at a certain point, depending on the buffing equipment you have, you'll be able to just buff out the fine scratches that are left. If you're doing it by hand, you want as few scratches and as much shine before you get to that point as possible. Also be very careful to stay off of the edges and the corners where the lacquer is thin. Last thing I want to do at this stage is sand through and expose bare wood. So here's something interesting to note. You can see where my old lacquer is laying on the new lacquer. That's normal, it burns in, but it still leaves a little bit of a shadow. And then it's like I've said before, if this was my guitar totally up to me, I'd have stripped this whole neck and finished right down to here. It would just look better, but we're gonna have this little bit of a ghosty line you can see, but once you buff out, it will be invisible. That's where dealers and collectors will take a guitar like this and hit it with a black light. And then these two differences on a gloss will jump out from one another. And that's how you can a lot of times tell that this guitar has been refinished or has had some repair work. So there's our tell right there. It'll go away when we buff out, but it's just an interesting thing to note. Let's wipe this down with some naphtha. It'll clean off some of this dust and give us a better view of how we're looking. This is looking great. I'm gonna do another grit. Just let all that naphtha flash off. Because you use Eagle abrasives dry. That's the other really cool part about this is no wet sanding, so I don't have to use a chemical under it or risk getting water in any of my screw holes. These things cut beautifully, just dry as is. And then the dust falls right back out of the paper. And then you can use these things multiple times. So this also looks like a lot because of all this dust that's coming off. I'm removing less than 1,000th in a pass, I would say. It's just turning to fine powder, but it always looks like you're taking off a whole lot more than you actually are. Most of this lacquer is staying in place. Let's do one more grit. I may stop after that. This is to a point where I'm pretty sure I can buff this out by hand and make it match this really well. All right, I'm stopping there. That looks awesome. We're gonna flip it over and repeat a similar process on the front of the peg head, and then we're gonna buff this whole thing out. At this point, we're not leveling. Again, we're just removing scratches left over from our sanding. I'm probably gonna hit a few more grits, if not all of them, on the peg head since I'm going for a little better looking shine here. I'm just gonna switch to using my hand at this point. We're really blurring the lines between sanding and buffing here. Make sure there's no scratches, and we start revealing more of a shine. Here's something I'm noticing, and I was hoping it might go away as I get further into my layers. I've got tiny little pinholes. There's two here, here's one here, and another one right there. I thought originally maybe it was a speck of dust and I would get through it as we took off layers, but what I think it probably is are bubbles. So I was putting this lacquer on fast, kind of bending some rules. It's best to not rush it. You can't rush lacquer work. And what'll happen if you put down too much lacquer too fast and you don't give it enough time to gas off before your next coats, the outside will skim up. And then underneath it, that lacquer is still gassing off, but it's kind of getting trapped by the outer layer. And you'll get little microscopic bubbles. And then as you level that paint off and you pop the head off the bubble, you end up with a tiny little pinhole. I'm not too worried about it because in the grand scheme of things, it's gonna be either gone when we buff this out or nobody will ever notice it because we're not going for perfection, as I've said many times. So I did go through every grit on the peg head. It didn't take very long. We're such a small area, and with some naphtha over it, that looks absolutely fantastic. So we are ready to buff this out, and this is gonna look like glass. So these are our buffing compounds, and I have some clean microfiber cloths, one for each grit, and then another rag here to clean off with naphtha. We're gonna start with medium, then go to fine, and then go to swirl remover. These are basically like continuations of our sandpaper. It's liquid sandpaper. It's just even finer than the sheets we were using. And we're just removing more and more microscopic scratches until this is totally flat, level, and shiny.
Yeah, I can see my little dots, but once this is all glossed up, it's not very noticeable, and you get some strings on here, and some of the natural dings that would be on here anyways. Me and you guys are probably the only ones that are ever gonna notice it, so we're gonna let it go. Let's move on to the fine. Oh, look at that. It's starting to look beautiful. Shining up pretty good. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and use the swirl remover. Ooh, that's more than I need. Just use some Q-tips to clean out compound from these holes. Give it a little Dan Early Wine rub. It's just the meaty part under your thumb is generally pretty soft, and it's like almost like a little chamois buffing pad. It works pretty well on stuff like this. When you're, a lot of the patina and the shine you see on vintage guitars isn't from the buff job that happened at the factory 40, 50 years ago. It's from constant friction and burnishing from your skin. So this actually does pretty well for stuff like this. That's gorgeous. That looks great. I'm not even mad about my little pinholes.
All right, let's repeat that same process on the back.
We're pretty close with the original lacquers, is already matching pretty well. Another step.
I'm gonna stop there. I don't even think I need to use any swirl remover, and really swirl remover is meant to take away any swirls left from a machine buffer. It's just an extra step of like ultra fine. Beautiful shine, it matches the body. This is awesome. The overlay looks great. If the worst hiccup I have are a few little pinholes from rushing the lacquer, I couldn't be more pleased. We're on the home stretch. The only thing left to do is get our hardware sorted out, do some routine maintenance and some setup work. We're gonna get strings on this thing and remind it that it used to be a guitar, and then we're off to Chicago. I went ahead and replaced the hardware. The bridge was worn way too low and the tailpiece was missing. And the plastic jack plate was broken, so I switched it out with a gold one. Metal's a way better material for this anyway. But it all looked out of place, shiny and new with the replacements. So I did some relicing work on it and dropped it into the tumbler we use downstairs to relic Waverly tuners. I replaced the tuners. There are two different sets of tuners that have been on this guitar, some Schallers and some Clouson strip tuners, but these strip tuners are right. So we're gonna put those back on, and the plate will give us just a little extra reinforcement. I had to replace some electronics that were sloppy, put in some original looking shielded wire that would have been appropriate for this time period. Then I made a brand new bone nut from scratch. Did a full fret level and dress. Made sure the board was cleaned and conditioned. And of course, a complete setup. I want to make sure that this thing rips the first time Tibor picks it up. This guitar is ready to rock. Time to deliver this thing. All right, we are on the road heading to Chicago. We thought it might be a good opportunity to address some of the comments, namely, how much would this repair cost? Lots of people have broken peg heads. Most of those are Gibsons, let's be honest. It's a fair question to want to know how much is it going to cost to fix this and what can I expect. Obviously, the cost of a repair like this is going to vary greatly depending on your location. I don't need to charge as much in Athens, Ohio as I would, say, Chicago or LA or New York. If I was still running a shop today full-time in Athens, I would be looking at a target of about $75 an hour. If you remember in part one, I laid out 3 basic options we were considering to fix the Explorer. So let's break those down and I'll give you my best estimate of what each one of those would have cost. So with the minimal approach, just a straight glue up, minor touch up, I would allot myself somewhere around 16 hours total. No special tools or supplies, just epoxy and glue I'd have around the shop anyway. No finishing, just minor touch up. 16 hours, we're looking at about $1,200. The second approach, the more traditional route, splining, backstrapping, I'd allot, a solid week plus. 40, 48 hours. I charge a little extra for finishing supplies, spray paint, things like that. We get in the neighborhood of $3,500 to $3,700. Finally, our $6 million man repair. If I wasn't making a video and just plowing ahead and getting the work done as quickly as I could, I'd give myself a solid week. 7 full days of working on it, 56 hours. So there were all sorts of supplies I had to buy, $100 or so into my carbon fiber rods and the plate we used, all the jigs and the fixtures we made. We had to buy a special diamond bit to route out on the CNC for the carbon fiber plate. Finishing supplies, spray paint's not cheap. And there's definitely on a job like this, a wild card fee where I'm doing something different and the stakes are high and I'm not exactly sure how this is going to come out, but the situation warrants some extra effort and maybe some outside of the box thinking. So I'm going to tack on another 10% or so on a job like this. If I overestimated, then the customer's even more happy that they got a solid repair and a cheaper price than I quoted. Another really popular comment was that it would have been easier to just make a new neck, and I don't see it that way at all. You can't just go out and buy an aftermarket Explorer neck like the kit neck I bought off of Reverb. That would never fit this guitar. I would be making one from scratch, and that's a lot of work. Would still need to make jigs, program CNC machines, do a lot of hand work to just make a one-off neck like that. I'd still have to remove the overlay and transfer it. I'd have to pull the fretboard off and move it or make a new one, plus a fret job, all the inlay work. It's as much work, if not more. So I'm still coming in at that $5,000 range, and that might even be underquoting it a little bit. In great shape, I've seen 76 Explorers go 6, 8 grand. Even in the state it is now, it's probably still worth $5,000. The other thing to keep in mind with a guitar like this, they're still appreciating. 5, 10, 20 years from now, it might be an $8,000 to $10,000 guitar. You've got to weigh all of that when making the decision. If you want to play a 76 Explorer that when you get it back and invest this money in it is going to play like a dream, it's going to look cool, it's going to have an awesome story, and it's still actively appreciating, I don't think 5K is unreasonable. Obviously this was a special case and I pulled out all the stops. I certainly don't want this to scare anybody away from having their peg head repaired, because they're not always expensive. I've done peg head repairs that were less than $100. If you've got a cheap guitar that's just a simple break that's popped open, squirt some glue in it, clamp it back up and string it back up and get on your way. But to me, all 3 of these options were viable solutions coming from me. So depending on what your budget is, these are the 3 things I'm willing to do at these prices and put my name on this repair. The quotes I've just given you will be wildly different depending on where you are, but also who the repair person is that you go to. You're also buying me backing my repair. If something goes wrong, you can call me and I will make it right. You can find somebody to do it cheaper, but you might regret it. So no matter the price or what your budget is, make sure you're working with a luthier or repair person that you trust. All right, so we're about ready to cross the border into Illinois. We're gonna be there soon.
This building Reverb is in is super cool. It was the old processing plant for the Morton Salt Company, but now it's a big indoor-outdoor music hub in Chicago called the Salt Shed.
Hello, welcome to Reverb.
Hello, this is Gene from StewMac. I'm here for Tibor.
All right, welcome in.
Welcome to Chicago.
Welcome to Reverb. I brought you a present.
Let me show you around.
Man, this place is awesome.
Welcome to the main area, man. We call this the gain stage.
And this is like a fully functional venue.
Got a whole speaker array. We have the mural.
Wow, did you guys make this?
Yeah. Our art director, Lynette Sage, designed it, fabricated the whole thing. Okay, Gene. Okay.
That is
You
super
can't too much. I need to see this thing. You gotta open it up.
Are you
for
ready?
me.
Here we go, man.
Oh my God. That's beautiful. May I?
Please, man. So you've got 2 carbon fiber rods from about here to here on each side. Under the overlay is a big cavity with a 16th inch carbon fiber plate, and everything's epoxy back together. Did a full fret level on it, new bone nut. It was missing the tailpiece. We had the bridge, but it was in kind of bad shape, so I just replaced them both and aged them. And then it had a plastic plate that was broken, so I aged a gold one and put it on there.
I mean, it still looks and feels like it's from 1976. That's incredible. So you ended up filling this in?
Yep, that's all kind of colored epoxy that I kind of matched this old touch-up with, and I really highlighted the cracks more than anything.
See, I'm really glad we did what we did.
I think this thing is bulletproof. Like, if you want to drop it on the ground, we'll see, but
I gotta hear this thing.
I've been waiting on you to do the honors, man.
I wonder what it sounds like through the Benson.
The Benson? Oh my God. I've been looking at this thing online. This is incredible. The world's loudest tube amp, right?
I think what they landed on, it's the world's most powerful production amp. It's 880 watts RMS, 14 KT 88 tubes, running through 6 212s and a 412. It has 2 transformers. It is ridiculous.
Let's plug it in, man. I gotta hear this thing. What are you gonna play, man?
Who do we think of as like the famous Explorer band?
I've got a few in mind.
Yeah? I got one too. Cody and
Skinner.
Cambria.
Cheap
King
trick.
Gizzard. God, there has to be something that connects us, right?
I'm feeling.
Yeah?
I'm feeling you.
Yeah?
Let's try again.
On 3. 1, 2.
Scorpions. Scorpions.
Gene, this guitar rips. There was no way for me to know how this was gonna play.
Like, we could do all this work and this thing could be a total dog. And it is not.
It is absolutely
not.
not.
Yeah.
Man, what a joy to play. What a journey we were on. I think it's appropriate we get this to its final resting place. I mentioned this was gonna be our studio guitar.
Live in your studio?
Let's get it there.
You've even got the stand ready for it. Look at that, Excalibur. Wow, this is incredible. Hey, think I could have a minute with the guitar before we leave, if you don't mind? Is that
no, absolutely. Do your thing, man. Take your time.
Thanks, man. Thanks. I'm sure gonna miss you. I'll never forget the memories we have together. You taught me so much. Patience, perseverance, never giving up on broken pig heads. And now I just wonder, who saved who?
Man, I think he's crying.
Someday you're gonna need a fret job. And maybe Tibor will send you to StewMac and we can be together again. Maybe we can even shoot a new video. So let's not say goodbye. Let's say, see you later. Okay, I'm ready. Let's go say goodbye to Tibor. Where is he?
Gene, don't cry. I got a next job for you.
Tibor, no!